What's going on, guys? So today I'm kind of excited for this video because this video is going to be a two-part series, kind of. I'm just splitting the video into two parts because if I try to do everything that I want to do in this one video, this video will be like 2 hours, and I'm not trying to edit that, you know? Like, all my editors out there know editing is so annoying. It takes such a toll. So I'm splitting this into 2 videos. So this is part 1 of this video. Today is a review, and I love doing reviews. I don't do them enough. My last review that I did was Red, White, and Royal Blue, which did amazing on my channel, so thank you so much for watching that. But today we are going to be reviewing Loki, the series. If you know me, you know I'm a massive fan of Marvel. I have a Loki poster right up there and a Moon Knight poster right behind me, so I freaking love Marvel. And I also have a Marvel collage of characters up there above my bed, so I love Marvel so much. I've been wanting to talk about Loki for a long time. And since I'm posting consistently on my channel now, I now get to talk about it. My original plan was just to talk about season 2 because obviously that is what everyone's talking about right now. Everyone's talking about the finale and how crazy it was. But I thought to myself, if I'm going to talk about Loki, I want to talk about the full experience of it and my opinions of both seasons. So this video is going to be my review on season 1 of Loki. And on Friday, is going to be my review on season 2 of Loki. I have a Loki shirt, but I swear I cannot find it anywhere. Like, I was literally looking for it for this specific video, but I can't find it. So I'm gonna try to find it for my Friday video so that I can wear it, because it's not a more appropriate time to wear that, right? So this is gonna be a long one, y'all, because all of my reviews are always longer. Like, my Red, White, and Royal Blue one was 38 minutes, and this one might be longer. I don't know. So before you watch the rest of this video, go ahead and go get a snack or a drink, get in some comfortable clothes, do whatever you have to do, because we're gonna sit down and review this season together. So I think that's all I have to say for this intro. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the video. Okay, so I did write some notes on my laptop that I have right here, and you can't see them, but it's like 4 pages worth of notes, and it took me all day to write them. And can I just say, side note, how much I hate daylight savings time, because it is literally 5:30 right now and it is dark outside. So yeah, hate that. Alright, yeah, I wrote notes, so if you see me looking down, I'm looking at my computer to kind of keep me on track of what I'm talking about. So yeah. So the first thing, I'm assuming everyone knows about Loki's lore and his backstory and everything, but if you don't, and you are maybe a new Marvel fan and you want to get a gist of who Loki is and what the, show is about before you watch it, there are going to be spoilers in this, but some people don't mind spoilers. Some people just want to know what they're going to be getting into before they watch it. So I don't discriminate. Come on in, come on and hang out. I am here to educate everybody that wants to learn about this. Before I talk about season 1, I'm going to give a little bit of Loki's backstory, because there's just some things you need to know before I start to explain season 1. So if you're not familiar, when we first meet Loki, we meet him in Thor's first movie that came out in 2012, I think. And when we meet him, Loki lives in Asgard, and he's the son of Odin, and he lives there with his father, Odin, his brother, Thor, and his mother, Frigga. I think I'm saying her name right, hopefully. So in the first movie, we learn that Loki is not Odin's biological son. So the backstory behind that is, in the midst of an Asgardian war, Loki is abandoned by his family, who are Jotun. I feel like I'm saying that right. Jotun, and he is the son of King Jotun Laufey, hence his last name, Loki Laufeyson. In the middle of the war, Odin finds Loki. He's abandoned. He's a little blue baby, and he is so adorable. And Odin takes pity on him, because no child deserves to be abandoned just for who they are. Because they abandoned him because he was a smaller version of the rest of them. So I guess they saw him as not valuable. So they abandoned him. So Odin took pity on him and use magic to make him appear human, because if you don't know, Jotun's true form, they're blue. They have blue skin and they're like freakishly tall or whatever. So he used magic to make him appear more human and took him in as one of his own sons, which is so sweet of Odin, I guess, until you learn about the other things that he does. It's crazy. Anyways, so in Thor, the first movie, Loki finds out that he is not an Asgardian, he is actually a Jotun by... Okay, hi, this is me editing. I just realized that I got the way that Loki finds out he's a Jotun wrong, because I was getting it mixed up with when he confronted Odin about being not an Asgardian. So the way that he actually finds out he is a Jotun is he goes with Thor and his friends on a mission to fight the frost giants. And while he was fighting one of the frost giants grabs his forearm, and usually if a frost giant grabs a mortal, they'll like freeze or get injured by their touch. But when the frost giant touched him, he started turning blue, which shocked him and the frost giant that he was fighting. And then like after that, he confronts Odin about it. So that's how he actually found out. It's not through Odin. So yeah, okay, goodbye. And Odin tried to keep this secret from him because he knew Loki would be upset when he found out. But I don't understand why you wouldn't just tell him. Well, I understand because Odin thought that the Jotuns were like evil and like whatever. But so Loki finds out. He's obviously upset about this because he's been lied to his entire life about who he is. He thought he was a true Asgardian, and Odin taught him that Jotuns are terrible people and they don't deserve to live, blah, 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 whatever, whatever. Just to find out that you're a Jotun and those are your people and your father has been talking down on them your entire life is kind of crazy, and I truly understand why he was upset. So Loki discovers this, and it leads to him resenting his entire family. That includes his brother and his mother, because all these people were lying to him. All these people knew, well, I don't know if Thor knew, but all, specifically his mother and his father, knew that he was not a true Asgardian, and they kept it from him to protect him. He then goes to rebel against his father, and he goes down to Earth to try to rule the people of Earth, aka New York. He tries to rule all of New York. He goes down there, tries to take over. So that is not his entire backstory at all, but that is just the important information that you need to know before I go into talking about season 1. It's important to know that in season 1, episode 1 of Loki, it opens up with the event that happened in the 2012 Avengers movie. The Avengers arrest him, and he has like the mouth guard on to keep him from talking and stuff, and they go on the elevator. But this specific scene is from the Avengers Endgame movie, where this plan goes terribly wrong. So in the Avengers Endgame scene, the Avengers have him and they get on the elevator, and Hulk tries to get on the elevator, and Tony's like, oh, no, what are you doing? Like, there's a 200-pound weight limit or whatever, so he has to take the stairs, which obviously pisses Hulk off. Because who likes to take the stairs? Nobody. I would rather take the elevator. So as they get down there, they're going with their plan of arresting Loki, and they have the Tesseract, and Hulk comes in and just disrupts that entire plan because he does not like stairs, and it makes him angry that they made him take the stairs. So he busts in, and like everything goes haywire, and Tony, I think, drops the suitcase with the Tesseract in it, and it slides across the floor and opens up right in front of Loki. Like, the Tesseract is right there. So Loki, being the god of mischief that he is, picks up the Tesseract and flees. He goes through a portal to get to another destination.
Good job meeting you. Let me grab a slice.
Which is what the Tesseract is. And if you don't know, the Tesseract's primary ability is to open up portals to other dimensions or locations in space. So that's exactly what he did. He went to another destination in space. So, getting into season 1 of Loki. So that was what the episode 1 opened up with. So when he travels through time to a different dimension, he ends up in Mongolia, where it's like a desert or whatever, and there's people there and they don't speak English, and he's trying to like rule them or whatever. It's crazy. And almost immediately, the some hunters from the TVA, which is the Time Variance Authority, which we'll get into later, come and they arrest him, and they're like, oh, you stepped away from your proper timeline, we have to take you. So they take him back to headquarters, which is the TVA. And when they take him back, he is stood in front of Ravonna, who is a judge at the TVA, and she asks him, like, are you guilty? Are you not guilty? And him being the god of mischief, he's like,
Guilty of being the god of mischief, yes. Guilty of finding all this incredibly tedious, yes. Guilty of a crime against the sacred timeline. Absolutely not, you have the wrong person.
so she sentences him to be pruned. And before he can, the guards can take him away to prune him, Mobius, who is an analyst at the TVA, goes to Ramona and convinces her to let him take Loki and interrogate him because he thinks that he could be useful because he is another Loki variant. So at first she's on the fence and she's like, you always do this, like, how am I supposed to know that this is going to work? And he's like, just trust me, I think it's going to work. So she's like, fine, you can take him and interrogate him. Mobius takes Loki and takes him to an interrogation room. So what happens in this interrogation room first starts off with some lighthearted, banter of Mobius kind of getting under Loki's skin because Loki obviously has this god complex of, I'm a god, I don't need to be here, the Time Variance Authority isn't real, it doesn't make sense, I make my own choices. And Mobius is just like, yeah, well, we planned out your entire life, we know what's going to happen in your life, we know from your birth to your death what happens to you. And Loki just can't comprehend this, as any normal human would react, because we do make our own choices. And how would you react if someone came to you and said, oh, your life is already planned out, you make no choices, your life is already planned out, from your birth to your death is planned out? Yeah, obviously we're gonna react and be like, no, I make my own choices, what are you talking about? As this interrogation progresses, Mobius kind of breaks Loki down because he's like, okay, I need to show you that this is serious and I know what's going to happen in your life. So he pulls up a projection of Loki's life and he shows him some events of what would have happened to him if he stayed on his proper timeline, which we already know what happened to Loki because this Loki in this series is not the original Loki. We all know that the original Loki died in Avengers Endgame by Thanos. But Loki, this one, doesn't know that because he went off of his proper timeline. So Mobius shows him some events that would have happened to him, which consists of his mother's death, which Loki was responsible for, which he didn't know, his father's death, and the way he was killed by Thanos. But the last two, he doesn't find out until later. So a series of events happens where Mobius has to leave and Loki is left alone, and he ends up escaping and running around the TVA trying to find the Tesseract so he can attempt to escape because he can't use his powers in the TVA. So he finds Casey and he's like, where's the Tesseract? Show me where the Tesseract is. And Casey's like, okay, I'll show you. And he opens his drawer and there's Infinity Stones. And Loki's very confused because, as we all know, Infinity Stones are very powerful on Earth. And he's like,
What? Infinity Stones? How do you have these?
Oh, we actually got a lot of those. Yeah, some other guys use them as paperweights.
I'm sure everyone watching was so shocked when they said that because we all know that multiple of our favorites had died because of this Infinity Stones. Examples: Natasha Romanoff, Tony Stark, Loki died because of these Infinity Stones that are supposedly so powerful, and now they're just sitting here and Casey's like, they use them as paperweights. So their death equivalates to paperweights for the TVA. Crazy. But anyways, so after all that, Loki ends up back into the interrogation room because he gets one of the devices that can transport him. Is it the temp pad? It's not the temp pad. He has a device that transports him throughout the TVA. So he ends up back into the interrogation room, and this is when he finds out that his father has died, and the way he dies is by Thanos. So after that, he has time to just sit and reflect on his decisions and what his life could have been if he stayed on his proper timeline. And so Mobius finds him with a prune stick ready to attack if Loki is influenced to attack him. And when he finds Loki is very broken down and vulnerable and kind of just defeated. He doesn't really look like he's gonna attack Mobius. So, and remember, before in their interrogation, Mobius asked Loki, he said, do you enjoy hurting people? Do you enjoy what you do to people? Because as we all know, Loki was a villain and he did kill people. He did so many terrible things to people. And Loki would never answer the question. He was like, I'm a god, this isn't true, this doesn't matter, what you're saying doesn't matter. So when Mobius finds Loki broken down and vulnerable, Loki finally admits,
I don't enjoy hurting people. I do it because I have to, because I've had to. Because it's part of the illusion. It's the cruel, elaborate trick conjured by the weak to inspire fear.
because he has felt lesser all of his life because of the way Odin has made him feel compared to Thor. Mobius takes pity on Loki and he says,
Desperate play for control.
You do know yourself.
A villain.
That's not how I see it.
so he offers him a proposition and is like, why don't you help me catch your variants? Like, we could really use your help because Lokis are so unpredictable and unreliable, and you are the only one that knows how you can think. So you would know where your Loki variant would be, where they would be, like, how they think. So Loki obviously takes up this proposition because if he didn't, he would die. And he knows he can't go back to his original timeline. The thing I love about this scene with him taking pity on Loki is nobody has showed Loki this kind of kindness and acceptance before, because everybody else that he's encountered in his life has pegged him as a villain, as someone who is not worth anything, as someone who will never be anything in life, as someone who is not a god. And Loki knows that he is a god and he's destined for a glorious purpose. He knows that. He just doesn't know what his purpose is yet. Once he takes Mobius up on this proposition of helping them find his variant Loki, they spend hours or maybe even days going through files trying to get information on his variant and like what their actions are, what they do, where they might be. So Loki eventually comes up with this theory that his variant might be hiding in apocalypses. And Mobius at first is just like,
Well, here's a fun theory. You lure me out into the field and then you stab me in the back. And that's a theory I don't want to test.
and Loki's like,
I've never stabbed anyone in the back. That's such a boring form of betrayal.
so he takes him to Pompeii to show him that apocalypses don't cause branches on the timeline. So he takes him to Pompeii, he does all this stuff, tells people they're gonna die, throws fruit around, like kind of screams and yells, and people panic, and it doesn't cause a branch on the timeline. So Mobius is like, okay, well, I guess this works. So they start looking for his variant, seeing what apocalypses they finally track them down to a future apocalypse that is in Alabama, and it is the hurricane of 2050, which hasn't happened yet, but we'll see what happens. They track his variant down, and Loki finally gets to meet his variant, and he is surprised to see that his variant is a woman. Now, I have to be really honest. When I first watched the show and I saw who his variant was, I was a little disappointed. And it's not because of the actress. I have no problem with Sophia, I think her name is. I have no problem with her. I just think they could have did a better casting on looks, because if you look at female Loki in the comics, she is this, tall, beautiful woman with long raven hair, and she's just beautiful. And I'm not saying Sophia isn't beautiful, but she's just not what I envisioned for the female Loki, because she is, kind of short blonde curly hair, and I was just like, what? Like, I don't know, it just didn't make sense to me, but whatever. So he meets his variant, and Loki is kind of caught between a rock and a hard place, because he wants to help Mobius catch this variant, but he's also wanting to get to the bottom of the TVA because he knows there's something wrong. There's nothing, I mean, this can't be true. Like, TVA is weird. He doesn't believe it. So he offers Sylvie, which we learned that is her name, he offers her a chance for them to work together to get to the bottom of the TVA, because he believes that that's what they both want. And Sylvie's like, no, I'm good. I don't want to work with you. And she uses her tempad to escape. So in this moment, Mobius sees Loki, and he's running down the hall or the aisle trying to get to Loki before he goes through the door, because he knows that's what Loki's thinking. He's like, he's gonna go through the door and go after her, and he thinks that Loki's trying to escape because he thinks that they might have influenced each other, but that's not at all what's happening. Loki just doesn't want to lose her again because they spent so long trying to track her down. So what does he do? He goes through the door, and the door closes, and Mobius is like, dang, why did I ever trust him? I knew he would do this. After everyone told him that he would abandon him or betray him, he thinks he did. He did not. So a series of events happens, and Loki and Sylvie end up in the most deadly apocalypse, or one of the most deadly apocalypses that there are, which is Lamentis 1. So they come up with this plan to escape this apocalypse, and they sneak on a train where all of the rich people and important people are, while all the poor people are trying to find a way out, and they're not helping them, which is so just the world we live in, where they help the rich and leave the poor to die. So the world we live in. So as they sneak onto this train, they get on the train, and the train starts to go. And while they're on the train, they start to bond over things that they have in common, because they are variants of each other. And they talk about stuff that happened in their lives, and how Loki, his mother, taught him magic and stuff. And it's a very kind of sweet moment, because it's like they are the same person. So, you know, obviously not everything in their life is going to be the same, but it's interesting to see how their lives are compared together. And in this scene, we find out that Loki is bisexual, because Sylvie asks him,
How about you? You're a prince. Must have been would-be princesses. Or perhaps another prince.
A bit of both. I suspect the same as you.
which is like, don't we just love LGBTQ representation? Like, I love it, and I love that we finally get to learn that about him. We also learned in an end credit scene that he is actually gender fluid, because at the end of every, during the credit scenes, there's a file that opens up with his picture, and it has, his name, his sex, his age, or whatever, and in where it says sex or gender, it might say gender, it says fluid, which obviously means that he is gender fluid. So that's really cool. That's another cool fact that people picked up on. A few maybe hours pass by, and Sylvie has fallen asleep, and when she wakes up, Loki is causing such a ruckus on this train because he's drunk. I think he got drunk, and he was singing, and people were singing along, and it was just really funny. And he comes up with this, because they had a conversation about, what love is, and I think neither one of them really knew what it was, and he comes up with this beautiful almost poem or analogy, or I think analogy for what love is, and he compares love to a dagger.
Love is a dagger. It's a weapon to be wielded far away or up close. You can see yourself in it. It's beautiful until it makes you bleed. But ultimately, when you reach for it,
It isn't real.
And it's just it's really beautiful. So after the ruckus he caused, the guards are alerted, and they figure out that they're not supposed to be on the train. So they fight, and throw Loki out the window. And Sylvie almost doesn't go save him, but then she realizes, oh God, he still has my TemPad. So she jumped out the window after him. So they're stranded with nowhere to go, and Lamentis is about to literally be destroyed. And they're both really defeated. Sylvie is angry at Loki because he shouldn't have followed her, or she didn't want him to follow her, and he's kind of feeling bad because he's like, yeah, I kind of did cause this. So they're both waiting for Lamentis to be destroyed, and Sylvie kind of reflects on her life, I guess, and she's like, is this really our destiny to lose all the time? Because as we know, Loki has never really won. He always dies, but he hasn't died yet, apparently. So, and Loki kind of rebuttals, and he's like, no, I think our destiny is to survive. Because it is. Loki has always survived, no matter how many times he's died. He's died 4 or 5 times in the MCU history, and he wasn't truly dead, because here he is now, alive. So, as they're waiting for Lamentis to be destroyed, you see this kind of chemistry happening, and I don't know about y'all, but I am not a Silky shipper. And if you don't know what Silky is, it's Sylvie and Loki combined, so it creates Silky. I'm not, just because I think they have a very strong sibling bond in my eyes, but when it comes to a relationship bond, I don't see it. I don't see the chemistry of a relationship. I think it's one of those moments where they're about to die. You know those scenes where, I don't know what movie it's been in, but you know that scene where two people are in an elevator, or two people are about to die and they don't know what to do. They have no more options. They have nowhere else to go. They can't win, and they kind of admit their love for each other, even though they're not really in love with each other. They just want some, they're so close in that moment of death where they're just like, I want to be with someone for the last time before I die. And so that's kind of where that attraction comes from, if you know what I mean. I think that's what that was. I don't think that their feelings were real at all. That's just me. I really don't. I just think they were about to die and they kind of have feelings for each other because they're the same person, right? They're the same person. So no, I am not a Silky shipper. I'm so terribly sorry. So before Lamentis gets destroyed, hunters from the TVA track them down and find them on Lamentis and take them back to HQ. So they separate them. They take Sylvie to a different interrogation room, and Mobius takes Loki to a different interrogation room. So we see Loki and Mobius in this interrogation room, and Loki is trying to warn Mobius that the TVA and the timekeepers are lying to them, that none of this is real and that they're all variants. Because I forgot how, but somehow Loki and Sylvie found out that all of them are variants, and at this point Mobius just doesn't trust anything Loki says because he thinks he betrayed him and abandoned him for Sylvie. And does this not give off vibes that Mobius was jealous of Sylvie? Because I'm gonna be really honest, okay? And y'all can hate me all you want, but I know a lot of y'all agree with me. I ship Lokius. And if you don't know what Lokius is, it's Loki and Mobius combined. I do. I ship it, okay? Sue me. Because tell me, you can't tell me that Mobius and Loki did not have more chemistry than Loki and Sylvie. You can't. Because they, like, just look, bro. And especially in season 2, which we will get to next video. But you can't tell me that Loki and Mobius did not have more romantic chemistry than him and Sylvie. You can't. Loki and Sylvie felt so forced to me. When Loki and Mobius, they weren't even trying to get them to be like romantic, but they just felt, you know, they just felt like, you know, I don't know, but like, I know a lot of y'all agree with me. And if you do, comment down below, because I know I'm not alone in this. I know it. I just know for a fact. But anyways, back to the original plot. Mobius is kind of making fun of Loki because he's like,
Was I fine?
If you like her.
What?
You like her. Two variants of the same being, especially you, forming this kind of sick, twisted romantic relationship. That's pure chaos. That could break reality. Break. You fell for yourself.
and Loki is like, I'm trying to warn you that you're being lied to. Your whole life is a lie. And Mobius is just like, blah, 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 whatever. I don't want to hear whatever you have to say. So Mobius, being the petty analyst that he is, he puts Loki in a time loop with Sif. And if you don't remember Lady Sif, she's from the Thor movies, and she was one of Thor's best friends. And she, in fact, hated Loki because Loki back then was a bully, and he bullied a lot of people. He puts him in this time loop where I guess Loki had cut her hair, and she confronts him about it, and he must say something like snarky, and she knees him in the groin. And it's just this repeated over and over again where she comes in, confronts him, knees him in the groin, and leaves. And that is so great. That is just, you know, another version of hell, because it's like, dang, I have to be in pain for however long I'm here. So going back to Mobius and B-15, Mobius starts to think about what Loki was trying to tell him about the timekeepers and stuff. And him and B-15 start to learn a little too much about the TVA, that they might be being lied to and that the timekeepers might be lying to them. B-15 goes to Sylvie, and I think B-15 at this point already knows something's up. So she takes her and frees her and is like, show me what you know. Tell me what you know. So Sylvie enchants her and shows her the life that she had on the timeline because she is a variant. And B15 is like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this is real. And she's like, so what do we do? So Mobius talks to B15, and B15 tells her that it's true. Sylvie showed me my life on the timeline, and we're all variants. So Mobius is like, oh my gosh, like I should have, listened to Loki. So he goes to the time loop with Loki. And speaking of which, before we move on with that, Loki in the timeline with Sif, we don't know at this point how long he's been in this time loop, but he's like broken down and beaten, and Sif just keeps coming in, is like confronting him. He's like,
I crave attention. I'm a narcissist. It's because I'm scared of being alone.
and he kind of changes the time loop a little bit, because instead of kneeing him in the groin, she helps him up from off the ground. But she still says, which is something she's been saying over and over again, but she says,
You are alone. And you always will be.
which is foreshadowing. Keep that in your mind. Keep that in your cranium, because we need that for later, right? We need that. So at this point, Mobius comes in to the time loop, and Loki's like, ugh, what do you want? Blah, 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 whatever, blase, blase. And Mobius is like, stop. Did you mean what you said about Sylvie? And he was like, yeah, I think, the TVA is lying to you. And he's like, good. He's like,
You can be whoever, whatever you want to be, even someone good.
what? Y'all, come on now. You can't fault me for being a Lokiest shipper, because nobody else in his lifetime has told him that. Nobody, not his mother. His mother might have told him, but not his father, not his brother, not anybody. Nobody ever told him, you can be anything you want to be, even if it's something good. Brody, what? And I think the only person that has ever showed him compassion like this is his mother. And his mother is now gone. So Mobius takes Loki out of the time loop, and they're met with Ramona and a few hunters. And Mobius knows he's caught because he wasn't supposed to keep Loki. He was supposed to prune him. And Mobius is just like, you know what? I know I'm being lied. Basically, he's saying, I know I'm being lied to. And I guess soon you will know it too. So Ramona, being the brat that she is, doesn't want to listen to anybody. So she's like, prune him. Prune him now. And they prune him, Mobius, and it's sad. So she takes Loki and Sylvie to the timekeepers for them to be sentenced, I guess. So they get to the timekeepers, and it's these like 3 big gods that sit upon thrones, and it's like in a smoky room or whatever. And I'm just like, what is this? I mean, when you look at it for real, it's just like, is this really real? Like, and Ravonna is the only one, I think, that is allowed to see the timekeepers. Okay. She takes them to the timekeepers, and, Loki, Sylvie, and them are kind of bantering, and Sylvie is like, finally had enough. She's like, okay, enough of this. So she throws her knife and beheads one of the gods, and they finally find out that the timekeepers are mindless androids. They're not even real gods. They're androids. And you're just like, what? So, like, literally their entire life is a lie, because the timekeepers aren't even real people or gods. They're androids. What? So you think this would be enough for Ravonna to be like, oh my god, my life is a lie. What am I even working for? What is the TVA? Who brought me here? But no, she stands strong in her beliefs, and she's like, okay, well, I'm gonna prune you. What? It's half an egg. So B15 comes in, and she's like, okay, if you're gonna prune them, you gotta go through me. So she brings Sylvie and Loki weapons, and they're battling. And I think Sylvie takes down Ravonna, so she's down for a while. And tell me why, for some reason, in this moment where they're fighting for their lives, Loki takes this moment to be like,
We're back on Lamentis. This is new for me.
back on Lamentis, I was gonna tell you that I love you. Like, what are we talking about? Y'all in the middle of battle, trying to fight for your lives, and you gonna stop the battle to be like, I was gonna tell you that I love you back on Lamentus. But luckily, he didn't get that far. He didn't even get to say he loved her, because guess who? Guess who rises from the dead? She wasn't dead, but guess who rises from the dead and prunes him? Ravonna. See, all of this could have been avoided if you didn't stop to try to confess your love to your actual twin. Can I get an incest? So when Loki is pruned, he wakes up in where all things go to be pruned, and I think it's called the Void, where everything goes. It's like people, items, everything is there, that if it gets pruned, it shows up there. So he wakes up and he's greeted by four of his variants. So they kind of, you know, are like, okay, come on, like, hurry up, get up, let's go. And they take him to their hideout where they're hiding from Eliath. Eliath is this kind of clouded beast that consumes anything that is dropped into the void. So if he sees you, he eats you, period. So they take him to their hideout where they hide from Eliath. And Loki is kind of confused. He's like, well, you're not going to try and fight back against Eliath? And they're like, no, we're good. We just like to kind of hide out here and like survive. And Loki's like, no, we need to do something. Like, what do you mean? And so they're like, okay, you can go, but we're gonna stay here. And Loki's like, okay, fine, I will, because I have a plan. Did he have a plan? I don't think so, but he was gonna leave anyway. So as he opens the bunker, he is met with a bunch of different Loki variants, and one of them is him, but as the president.
Hello. Which one of us are you?
So they invade their bunker, and one of the Lokis betrayed the other three Lokis and was like, yeah, I told them where we were, so now I'm king of this, or I'm the ruler of this. And they're like, actually, no, you're not. Because they're all Lokis. They're all gonna betray each other because they're all liars. Like, you know what I mean? This is just so funny how Lokis can even trick themselves. Because they're just, it's weird. Anyways, so Loki, classic Loki, and Kid Loki, and Alligator Loki all escape the bunker. And so they come to this agreement, and they're like, okay, fine, we'll take you to Eliath, but that's as far as we're going to take you. We're not going with you. So, on the opposite side of this, Sylvie forces Ramona to tell her everything she knows. And for a brief moment, they team up and try to, like, get to the bottom of everything. Until Sylvie finds out that Ravonna can't be trusted because she's still strong in her beliefs that the TVA is real and the timekeepers are real. Why? We don't know. But, so once Sylvie finds out that Ravonna can't be trusted, she prunes herself because she's like, there's no point in me being here. I'm going to go find Loki and we're going to find a way to, like, get to the bottom of this. So once she prunes herself, she ends up in the void, and Mobius found a car that worked. How? Don't know. But he finds a car and he sees Sylvie, so he's like hauling it down the hill and he's beeping the horn. He's like, get in. So she gets in and they drive, and she's like, we gotta find Loki. He's like, okay, fine, like, we'll go find Loki. So when they find him with his variants, Loki is surprised to see Sylvie. He's like, how'd you get here? She's like, I pruned myself because Ravonna can't be trusted. I don't know if that's what she actually said, but basically is what she's saying. So Sylvie and Loki decide to team up to go find the end of time, which is in the void. And Mobius is like, I'm gonna go back to the TVA and literally burn it to the ground. As you should, babe. He didn't, but as he should have. Before Mobius leaves to go to back to the TVA to burn it down, he's like, he puts out his hand, he's like, well, I'll see you later, Loki. And what does Loki do? He looks at his hand and he looks back at him and he's like, nah. And he hugs him. Ah! And you might be thinking, like, if you're not a Loki shipper, you're like, okay, it was just a hug. That was not just a hug. I'm gonna put a clip in here, and I need you to look at the way that happened. I need you to look, and the way they hugged is so, like, you know, it's just so much chemistry there. Like, please.
See you later, Loki.
Lokis, Classic Loki and Kid Loki and Alligator Loki are like, okay, we brought you to Eliath, we're gonna go now. We're gonna go try and survive. Good luck. But at the last minute, Classic Loki ends up sacrificing himself, or like, yeah, he ends up sacrificing himself and using his powers as a distraction to distract Eliath from Loki and Sylvie so that they can get past him to the end of time. And then Classic Loki ends up dying, which, rest in peace, because he was a real one. Because who else would have done that? He was so real for that. I love him. So once Loki and Sylvie get to the end of time, they're met with Miss Minutes. And she introduces them to He Who Remains, who is the keeper of the timeline. And to their surprise, he is literally just a man. He's just a man, a human who can die. He bleeds, he eats, he literally is just a man, which is kind of crazy if you think about it, because you're like, a man, a simple human man is just the keeper of a timeline with a bunch of different millions and billions of lives on it. Kind of crazy, right? So he takes them to his office or whatever, and he tells them of the story of his variants and how they caused a multiversal war. And the only way he could contain this multiversal war is by creating Eliath to protect him and seal off the timeline. So everything, like, he knew everything that was going to happen up to this moment that Loki and Sylvie got here. So he kind of has this revelation, and he's like, oh God, like, it's done. Like, I don't know what else is going to happen after this because my time is done. So he gives them two options. That's 4. He gives them 2 options. You can either kill me and cause another multiversal war where my variants will come and, you know, try to take over, or you two can take my place as keepers of the timeline and rule together and, you know, create the timeline and create the stories and decide what's going to happen. So at this point, you can visibly see that they are on very different sides. They have very different opinions on this, because Sylvie is just angry because her life got taken away from her, because she knows that this is not her life. She knows that she had a life before this. So she's like, you're lying. I don't believe you. I think you're lying, so I'm gonna kill you. And Loki's like, wait, hold on. Let's think about this for a second, because he could be telling the truth. Because what are the chances, like, why should we take the chance of creating another multiversal war if we don't have to, if we could just stop and think for a second and discuss our options? And Sylvie seems so certain on this. She's like, no, he's lying. I'm done. I'm going to kill him. They fight, and the unbelievable happens. I can't even tell you how angry I was when I first watched this. I was so upset because I was like, what are we doing? This is his literal twin. They are the same person. How are you going to make them be together? This is basically incest. Like, I stand and I will die on that hill that this is basically incest. How are you going to make the same person with the same DNA makeup, the same genetic makeup? The only difference is that he's a man and she's a woman, and you make them kiss. That's weird, and I won't forgive Marvel for doing it. My theory is that I think he only kissed her to stop her from killing him. I think he was trying to convince her not to kill him, and he thought that kissing her would do it. And guess what? It didn't. She took her TemPad, she opened up a portal, and kicked him back to the TVA. And then what does she do? She turns around, and she goes and kills He Who Remains. And he's like,
See you soon.
as a play on like, oh, my variants are gonna come after you. Well, guess what happens, baby? Guess what happens? Guess what happens? We cut back to Loki at the TVA, and he's like, oh my gosh, like, what the heck? So he runs. He's running to go find Mobius, and we see Mobius and B-15 talking, like, what's happening? What's going on? Like, I don't understand what's happening. And he's like, we found him. We found He Who Remains. We found the guy who's behind all this. And what does Mobius say?
Take it easy. You're an analyst, right? What division are
What?
you from?
What are you talking about?
Who are you? What's your name?
What are you talking about? Like, what are we... I want to see every person's reaction to that exact scene, because I know mine's was like, what? Yes, he's like, who are you? What's your name? And then we pan over to a statue of He Who Remains. And then it ends. That's how season 1 ends. And I just can't. Like, season 1 was so crazy and confusing. So then obviously the end credit scenes roll and we find out that there's going to be a season 2. Rightfully so, because if they just left it there, that would be kind of crazy. But so that is the entire plot line of season 1 and just some of my thoughts on what happened and some of the dynamics and the events. So when I first watched season 1, I was not a fan of it at all. I was like, this is bad. I'm sorry. Like, it wasn't like the storyline was bad, but it was just like, what are we doing? Like, this just seems so all over the place. And I think now that I've rewatched it, because I did rewatch it before I watched season 2, and obviously now it makes sense about season 1, but at the time I was just like, no, not my favorite thing that Marvel has put out, because there was just a lot of things that I didn't agree with. But there was other things and I was just like, I don't see where they're going with this. I don't really know. If you would have asked me like 2 years ago when it came out what my rating would have been, it definitely would have been either a 1 out of 5 or a 2 out of 5. Probably a 2 out of 5 because 1 just seems really harsh. But now if you ask me, what's your rating on season 1? It's probably a 3 out of 5. Just because I understand. It's still not my favorite season because I still am just like, it's kind of but connecting it with season 2, it makes a lot more sense. So I'll give it a 3 out of 5 stars because it's not my favorite thing in the world, but a lot of stuff still happened where I was like, oh my god, this is crazy, this is amazing, I love this. And any chance for me to see Loki on screen is a good day. It just is. That is my review on season 1 of Loki. I give it a 3 out of 5 stars. I'm really excited for it is to get into this review for season 2, which I still have to type up the notes for that, which is going to take me forever because so much happened in season 2 and season 2 was easily a masterpiece, so I can't wait to get into that. But as of now, that is my review on season 1 of Loki. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and leave a comment down below of what you thought of season 1 and what were your first thoughts and what were your opinions and what you thought of some of the dynamics and ships and stuff. I would really, really love to know, just to know that I'm not alone in some of these opinions. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in part 2 of this video on Friday. Yeah, bye guys.